Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Shelly Look. I'm a fashion designer, director, and creative. I was looking for a platform to create new conversation. I have a wonderful creative community and I wanted to tap them, kind of hear what they're up to, inspired by, what they're motivated by, and encouraged by during this pandemic. Join me in listening to my conversation with Jennifer Smith Tapp. Do you see us on the screen as side by side?
No.
Oh, okay. I do.
Well, wait, am I supposed to do something?
I don't think so, no. As long as you can see me, we're good to go.
I can still see you.
I just want to figure out how to change this. Okay, perfect. So who are you? What do you do? What's your name?
My name is Jennifer Smith Tapp. Who am I?
Who are you?
That should have been the first question.
Maybe it's like maybe it's like 3 words or 2 words that you feel like is like, this is who I am.
I would say I'm a creative person. I think that's like the best way to describe who I feel I am like at the moment. Yeah.
And what do you do?
I am director of brand strategy and partnerships for Marc Sievers, who is a cookbook author here in Chicago.
Amazing. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm trying to occupy myself. I've had a little more time on my hands than I think I ever wanted, but trying to find ways to be creative, but also take the time and space necessary to like grieve transition and whatnot. But
and not cry every 5 seconds.
Right. Yeah. Do you have days like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, I always tell myself I'm not going to, read this article. I'm not going to do that or whatever. I mean, then I always just end up doing it because I feel like it's better to sort of know but then not know. Yeah. And there's no way, you can't really like delay being sad or, being mortified. It's just going to happen. So I'm just trying to whatever, you just feel whatever you feel. And I mean, it's more time than, than obviously probably any of us wanted. But, but what I realized is I really do like being at home. I just don't want to be forced to be at home.
Yes. Yes. Are you introverted too? We talked about this.
Oh yeah, because you're both INFJs, remember?
That's right. We're both super rare. How did we find each other?
Because we're so fabulous.
But it's like I want to be in isolation by my own choice, not because I was told to.
Like I'm having those days. It's like, it'd be nice to just be sitting outside at wherever, having a glass of wine or eating lunch or going out for a coffee or whatever. Yeah, I think I've been out of the house twice.
Really?
Since, like the middle of March.
What did you go out for? Was it for food?
I was working.
Okay.
I was working with Marc, and then he had the sense that this might be the last time to be able to to get people together. And so I was already there, and so we just had a couple of people come over, and we were shooting a few recipes that day. And so he just had people come over, and we just ate dinner, and then actually it turned out, I think like just a few days later the governor shut the state down. So that was literally the last time I was out. Had essentially everything delivered. How are you guys doing?
We can't complain. I mean, we get antsy and we have our like up days and down days, just I think like anybody else. But for Dave, actually, he's always worked from home. So he's partnering in a web development company. So that portion was like, it wasn't even a transition because he was already working from home.
Yeah, that's like me.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so for him, I think it's more a matter of like not being able to go out and be social or have people over, like that part, I think gets to him most. From the work from home standpoint, it's the very same for him. I mean, he's been doing it for over, I think, a decade now.
Yeah.
So it's like not new at all. His commute is going up our stairway. So So I used to have the studio space that I would go to. It was like, a separate space for me to go and do any of the work that I was doing.
And the studio in Ravenswood.
I was home, right? But now that I'm having to do, like my work has totally been obliterated. Like the consulting I was doing, any of the clients, everything's postponed, obviously. Yeah. And so I'm just out of work right now and searching for work, but separating doing all of that activity or like work related activity from being 4 feet from my kitchen. And I'm like, oh, I should do dishes. Oh, I should do laundry. Like, how do you just do okay bouncing back and forth like that?
Yeah, because sometimes, I think also too, and Dave might be the same way too, when you work from home, I guess you have more sort of space to realize when your brain that day is just not it. Your brain's just sort of like, yeah, that's really funny. You thought you were getting all this stuff. Like, no, you worked for like an hour and your brain just
just kind of have to deal with it. Oh man.
Which if you're, you know, in an office or in that situation, you have to do what you have to do, and you can't, you don't have a choice. So, but I think I learned how to do that just because of necessity. I don't know, it's been so long, but I don't even remember if it was easy to do or not. It just was something I had to do.
Do you have like a cutoff moment at which you're like, okay, now I'm just going to be home and do home things? Or do you almost find that it leads to you always working just because you're so used to going back and forth all the time that like 9 p.m. if an email comes in, or, you know, or do you cut yourself off at a certain time to be like, I'm just going to be home now?
I've always realized that my brain, like especially on days when I really work for, you know, like hours and hours and hours, around like 4:30, that's when I know it's just like,
close it down.
That's just because I have, you know, just from experience, I realized that in writing or editing or whatever, that's when I know that I'm not really doing my best work. And some days it could be different. The magazine or different magazines are on deadline, and there's just things you have to get done, and then you work right up until dinner or whatever.
So how has work like maneuvered it all for you, or is it you sort of still in the same flow with Marc?
No, that's been reduced a lot because a lot of the way he was funding everything was from the sort of like commercial side of his business, the food styling, and with his outside clients. And so all of that, you know, and it started late March is when, you know, stuff just got canceled and postponed, and we were about to start planning, you know, a new cookbook, and so everything just sort of like shut down. And so what I'm like, my hours with him have been reduced a lot. It's been good in a way because it's allowed me to kind of start thinking about, because I know that there's other things I can see myself doing, you know, sort of in the future. And so it's giving me time to kind of think about that and put some structure around that.
Do tell.
I saw your eyes like that. You're like, oh, really?
Like, what are you thinking about? Because I know that there's always stuff bouncing around. Was that what you had said when we had chatted via text, that you're like, I have a lot kind of going through my mind I would love to process through?
Yeah, because I think, well, I mean, you know, like my two big loves are like editorial and fashion.
Yep.
And so
why we get along.
Yeah,
one of the many reasons.
One of the many
being INFJs.
I love magazines. I love, you know, publications, but I think print is just definitely, I love it, but I don't know if there's a real path forward for that because it's so expensive. And I've been purposely reading a lot just on the fashion industry as a whole, especially from, you know, sort of like the designer side.
Yeah. Because
there's so many, I mean, you know, I know so many local designers who I worry about them. It's like, well, what is everyone, what's happening? Like every day there's a new retailer declaring bankruptcy. And I've heard stories about designers, you know, who are still owed tons of money from these retailers. It's like, okay. So it's almost in where, you know, I think I've mentioned before, it's like where there's just sort of really horrible things happening. It's like, okay, there has to be opportunity in there somewhere. Yep.
Do you ever, because I feel the same way, like my brain kind of goes that space, and I don't know if it's a coping mechanism with how like dark it can feel sometimes, or if it's just the fact that I'm like an eternal optimist. But do you ever find that like when you're sitting back sort of receiving all of this negative information, like heartbreaking stories, but there's still this spark in you that's like, there's opportunity here. Do you ever almost like find yourself in a tension of guilt with that? Of like, why am I being an opportunist? Or is that opportunistic, or is that optimistic? Do you know what I mean?
Both. I mean, I think, yeah, I definitely like that. Maybe that's just because you can either be like that, or you can like, you know, curl up in a ball and just like all day long. And that's not really my nature either.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I can, you know, understand and empathize with things that are happening with other people. But then also too, we will be on the other side of this. And it's like, you don't wait until then to figure out what you want to do, or what you can do, or what's available, you know, or what's out there, what the opportunities are. It's like you think about it now, and I think about it all the time because I know it's like, you know, like I said, I know that there's opportunities there in an industry that I think is completely like, there's probably few industries that have been upended in the same way that fashion has, for a bunch of different reasons. What is the idea of like, what does luxury really mean?
Right.
To people now.
Look like,
And so, yeah, I guess to answer your question, like I think about that too, but I don't know if I feel guilty about it, because I think to me it's a separate thing than being upset that like doctors and nurses don't have what they need, or being upset worrying about those doctors and nurses like, a year from now with, possible PTSD. And so to me, that I can have all of those feelings, within the space of half an hour. Think all those different things, all those thoughts, and have all those feelings like that,
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I feel guilty about it, because I think of myself as someone who actually cares about other people, and yeah, so I don't feel guilty, about that.
So you had mentioned like thinking about, there's going to be another side to all of this. Like, what do you see? I would almost like want to just hear from you specifically to you of like, what do you see maybe being steps that you're taking for seeing that other side? And maybe that kind of goes back to the previous question of like, what are some of the things that are bouncing around in your head of what you want to do in regards to what you're passionate about?
Well, I think when I think about, like, I think Editorial, like, thought about doing, a project of my own for a while. And probably something, as much as I would love, print, but that would probably be something that would be digitally based.
Yeah.
And with the publication not being like the whole part of the brand, in-person events and panels and things like that would probably be all something that could be part of that. But then I also really love the idea of being like working in, like actually in fashion with the label, doing like something, to help launch a label, or just like something like that, but something not just another super expensive brand that's not really paying attention to what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Because I do think people aren't, it's not like people are going to come out of this and all of a sudden not care about where their clothes come from and not care about beautiful things and all of that. So
I don't think that will ever go away.
Yeah.
At least not while we're alive. Somebody will carry the torch.
Even if it's just the two of us.
Seriously. Are there any brands right now, like especially specifically like in the Chicagoland area that you would want to kind of get your hands in and work with?
Besides yours?
Well, yes. My non-existent in between transitioning brand.
Girl, it's a thing.
It is very much a thing, yes. I exist, but I don't. I'm kind of here, but I'm kind of not. Yeah. It's very real.
Yeah, I mean, I would always love to work with you. That'd be so fabulous.
It'll happen one day. We just have to figure out the timing will be right. We'll know when it is.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a few, which I think we might have talked about already. It's like Rakan, Sean Maldine's, who's I think you might have met him at the sitting. I think he might be one of the designers that we maybe shot like before or after you. He's a Syrian guy.
Oh, no, but I know that he was, I saw him in the publication. I don't think that I actually met him, though.
Yeah, I can't remember who was there when you were there. He's someone that I've been paying attention to, and he's really really good and really interesting. I think he was actually on a season of Project Runway. I think the last, not this season, but the one before. Yep. And then Lauren Mark, I think, who does the Silmar label. Mm-hmm. She was there for that same sitting, but I think she was one of the people who came with Tanya Gross when Tanya was running the incubator. Yeah. Those are the two. Oh, and there's also Sernette Swaby, who was also at that same sitting. She does really amazing, like,
It was a good group.
Yeah, it was. I was like, the whole time just couldn't believe it was happening.
You're all on the same
It turned out exactly the way I wanted it to.
Wow, that's so fun.
I know, I love that shoot. So yeah, so those are the three, again, besides you, that I really would absolutely hate to see not eventually, be, sort of major labels, because I think that the four of you definitely have that potential.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Oh my. Where do you see Editorial going? Because I know that's the sector that you've existed in. I feel like it just sort of flows from you anyway, Yeah,
that's as far as what's the most natural fit. That's it, because I've been doing it for so long and also paying attention to it for almost my entire life. Yeah. I think of it differently as someone who was an editor than maybe I would if I was a writer. It didn't have to think about how you pull it all together. Because when you think of it from an editor's standpoint, it's a brand. You know, every magazine you work for is a brand, meaning that it has that editorial mission, and nothing goes in that doesn't point to that mission.
Yeah.
You know, with Chicago Woman, I wasn't going to put a story in there about, father and son relationships or whatever, because that,
it's off brand.
It's off brand. And so, so I think I just see editorial like as a whole. I mean, I take fashion out of that because fashion editorial is so dependent on advertising revenue because it's so expensive to produce. So to me, that's a separate, I would have a separate answer for that.
Yeah.
Which I think for that needs to go. Whether it happens as soon as it needs to, I guess is a different story. Because I think that fashion people want to hang on to that kind of exclusivity and
absolutely,
being like the cool kid, the cool kids table as much. Like they're very much into that.
Do you think that mentality is still going to exist though on the other side of this?
I've been reading a lot of things. I don't know. You probably do read Business of Fashion. Do you follow them at all?
Yeah.
It's interesting just to read the posts and more importantly, the comments on the posts.
Yeah.
When you follow the Business of Fashion, like on Instagram, because when you read the comments, you feel like, well, maybe, people don't really have the patience for any of that anymore. And people are going to see that they don't want to see, influencers, in, Dior gowns when their grandmother's in the hospital. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't think it'll be exactly the same as it was, because I was talking to Marlo about that even way before this, how a lot of younger people weren't really putting stock in, those types of influencers anymore.
Yeah.
And in the reading that I've been doing, trying to kind of thinking about how to position Marc in, sort of food lifestyle space, a lot of people are like, well, do you really trust that person, uses that product and would have used that product? So do you really
trust their voice, or does it just feel transactional? Like, oh, they're just getting paid for this. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that what I hope happens with fashion is that there's less, not reliance. I don't think fashion relies on, I think they probably have come to rely more on what happens on social media than in the bad way with like influencers and things like that. So I think fashion needs to figure out how to have authorities, because there has to be authority. That whole industry, especially in editorial, doesn't exist if people don't feel like they should listen to certain people.
Right. It needs leaders. Yeah,
exactly. And that started to break down anyway, because with social media, the brands themselves could determine how they want to, tell their story.
Yeah.
And so you don't need editors to help you do that. And the most important people at fashion shows aren't the editors anyway. They don't put money in the pockets of the designers. Yeah. And so I'm really interested to see, you understand that, like you say, if you had a show, who do you want really being able, to be front row?
Yeah. So do you see them more as like the microphone?
Who, the editors?
Yeah. Of like, if a designer has something to say and there's like this mass sea of people, nobody's going to hear you unless you have a microphone, right? So even though the microphone isn't actually what's putting food on your table, you still need it in order to reach that sea of people. Like, is that kind of how you view an editor's role? I think that could be an editor's role, but what concerns me about that is editorial integrity, because if Chanel bought, 15 pages of ads for your September issue, and and some other designers, which is most sort of younger designers, weren't able to afford to do that, does the editor feel compelled to amplify Chanel's voice because they spent $30,000 or $100,000 in that issue? And that's one of the things that in a lot of ways turned me off of fashion magazines, especially, I just say the more like legacy magazines, because it was the same designers in the editorials. Yeah. There could be, like little, like front of books, little blurbs about new designers, but you would read about a new designer, in like a little paragraph, but then you would never see them in the actual editorials. It's like, okay, so you didn't see value in putting them in the editorial and having whatever editor was working on that sitting to select that piece to pair with something else. When you look through the the retail credits of the editorials, they're all advertisers. Yeah.
I think editors are microphones, but I think that gets compromised
because of the dollar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like even what you were saying earlier, when it comes to influencers, depending on what tier of influencer you are, how are you actually gaining the trust of the people that you're influencing or the people who are following you? It sounds pretty similar there. If you don't really have the trust of your readers and what you're saying, then it just really does come down to it's a dollar issue.
Well, so many of them, because I remember in the very beginning of the whole influencer thing, like there was a lot of like pushback from fashion people, like fashion editorial people, because all of a sudden these people with blogs were next to
competition.
Them
Yeah.
And in a way I could kind of understand, because you have to really work hard to get, if you are in a position at, a legacy magazine, you worked really hard for that, but to get to that part, or you knew someone and you could, you knew enough. But there was a lot of pushback from that, because a lot of the people, they had blogs that, a lot of people started to read, but they weren't really well written. And so there's a few of them now that I can think of that are still around. That
makes me super curious as to what publications you're actually, like, which ones are you drawn to that you read, that you kind of keep an eye on?
Yeah, I try to think. The ones I like the best are the ones that aren't just fashion magazines. The ones that are just about just creative people in general.
And fashion is just an element of it.
Yeah. It's like, so I thought about, it's like, well, if I had money and real money to, to launch, not that you need a ton of money to do something online, but if I were to launch my own brand, editorial brand, it would be something that would be, a cross between like Vanity Fair or like wallpaper and, just a little bit of people from fashion, food, and maybe academics and all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And if I would have, like ideally like visual, like fashion elements to it, because I can't, it's because I love doing that.
Can't get away from it.
No. Like Serial magazine I like.
So why haven't you started your own?
Well, until recently, because I was doing your face.
I'm like, don't you have a little more time on your hands now? How do we get started?
No,
you yourself just said it doesn't take that much money to like start an online one.
That's something that I'm thinking about for sure. But and that's why I've been reading a lot more of different types of magazines.
Yeah.
To see exactly, because I don't want to put something out there that's essentially something that's already out there, because that's not interesting, and why. But there's also nowadays too, I think that you have to think about what other revenue streams can you bring in.
Yeah.
Because advertising,
not going to happen.
It's right. I mean, it could. That's not something I think that you can like immediately count on right out of the gate.
Right.
Because we found that out with, at the magazine. There's even less money out there now.
Yeah.
People don't want to spend money on something that they don't feel like is a guarantee.
Yeah. You need some type of platform that people actually can count on in making those decisions. And until you have that,
And it can't be, I don't want it to be something that essentially looks like a blog. I mean, not to like, to sort of like denigrate blogs, but it's 2020, so there needs to be a different level.
It can't just be another regurgitation of a million things that have already been seen. Yeah.
In every aspect, it can't look like a million other things. Like I have an idea of what I would want it to look like. Yeah. So to answer your question, I'm thinking about it.
Okay. I'm gonna keep pushing, just because I think like it comes so naturally for you, and you've had so much work experience in that field, but you bring such a different edge, and the like network of people that all across different art platforms and culture brings such a unique voice. And you're from Chicago, and I just don't even think that there's anything in Chicago that looks or feels that even comes to mind like that I think it's a necessity. So I'm going to keep asking, and I'm going to keep pushing, because I'd be excited to see it. It's exciting even to throw around the ideas with you, because I know your level of excellence and how you would deliver something like that would be really prolific, I think, in this area and beyond.
Oh, you're
obviously.
So sweet. We'll keep pushing each other.
Yes. Get my line going. Clothing.
So tell me what's happening with you. What are you thinking about what you want to do?
That's a really great question. What do I want to do?
Besides growing your hair out, your hair looks amazing. I'm thinking
thanks. If I have a choice right now. I know. When you and I met, I think was it shaved or What was I've split my life into what my hair has looked like. Those are like different periods.
I'm trying to think. It was a little bit longer. It was definitely like on its way to what you have now. Yeah.
It's growing out. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with it. I'm trying to not think too much about it. But what am I doing? So when I stopped CHC at the very tail end of the summer, very beginning of the fall.
Tear.
It's all right. It really was a move of like feeling restricted. Like I'd almost put myself in this box creatively. And even though I didn't know what stretching out was going to look like or feel like, it felt necessary, you know? And I never saw that decision coming. It just, I don't know if I ever told you the story of where it just sort of dropped in me one day of like, this chapter is closed. And it was a bit shocking, you know? But it was also, it wasn't during like a really bad day, because when you have your own brand and you're trying to build your own business, you have really great days, but most days are like really down. It didn't like drop in me in that moment. It dropped in me while I was in the middle of sewing and filling orders. So it was kind of this moment of like, it wasn't just an emotional decision because I was frustrated or angry. It was like a very peaceable voice inside of me. But when I had stopped it, I didn't have a full understanding of what I was going to go into next or whatever, because I've been doing CHC since I was a sophomore in high school. Like this was the thing, you know, this was the focus. This was every spare minute I had. Just naturally, I was always thinking about how to grow it, how to maneuver it, how to change it, how to build it. To have to shut that off and like redirect my thoughts has been, I'll name it now, a grieving process. I don't think in the moment I saw it as that. I didn't know it as that.
Yeah.
It's taken a little while to like put that initial vision to rest. Like that thing that I thought I was going to build isn't happening anymore. And I've been working on it for a while, but 10, 15 years.
You could tell though, I didn't know that you'd been thinking about that since high school.
Oh yeah.
But you could tell. That's one of the things I loved about CHC. It was very precise. And so now knowing that how long you've been thinking about that, like that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. That's super kind of you. Coming off of closing that down, I had started to get people reaching out for consulting while kind of deciding, okay, what's my next move? You know, am I starting another brand? Because I still kind of feel like I have the vision in me, like what the long-term vision was to build a fashion house and be a designer and have a brand. Like, I don't know that part is gone, but CHC.
Oh my God, please say no.
I can't stop creating. So that part's not going anywhere. But clearly CHC, at least for now, just wasn't the vehicle to do that. And I thought that just having to be okay with like putting that aside. But then as I had, you know, obviously more time to kind of think about it and chew on it and grieve it, I was like, man, there's just so much that I want to still learn. Like I loved the time in Italy and getting to just learn so specifically more and more about my craft. And it was like deep dive, right? Just into the craft, not into the business, not into the marketing, not into the creative direction, not into any of that other stuff. It was just fixed time on craft. And knowing how much I grew from that, not only as a craftsperson, but also as a person, was like, maybe I just need to find myself in more spaces of learning, right? From people who are excellent at what they do. And part of my desire is to have some type of influence in changing this industry for the better, but you don't do that overnight, right? And you have to have an understanding of how the industry works in all its facets. And I don't have that understanding yet. And so it was kind of this moment of laying my own pride aside and going, I want to get with a luxury brand because I just have a passion for the luxury market. Can't explain why, just do. I love that level of excellence. I love the attention.
Because that's the epitome. I mean,
yes, the storytelling, all of it.
Yeah.
But it was like, you know, needing to find myself in those places and spaces so that I know how it works. So I know what needs to be improved, right? Like, who am I to go into something and be like, I'm going to bring change, but I don't even know how the initial thing works.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of, it was naive. It was prideful. It was a lot of things. It wasn't necessarily bad because my heart was good. My intent was pure and lovely, but my method was a little off. And so my push has been to try and find a position within some type of luxury brand. Now, the state that we're in now kind of has that needing some reworking.
I mean, you're not on a plane to Italy right now?
I'm not. And trying to find, you know, a career in a position right now with a luxury brand is, it's up there. It could still be, you know, but it's not nearly as likely given the pandemic that we're in. So just looking at reality right now, it's like my search is still on to find a position like that, whether it's here in Chicago, which probably is less likely just because there's not too many brands here like that.
Yeah.
Or if it's in New York, or if it's somewhere else. The search for that is still on. Since everything has slowed, it's a matter of going, okay, what can I control now? Because I can't control that. You know, I can control the time I put in to apply. So I've just been looking to create, because that's what I know how to do, and it's what I flow in doing. And so trying to find new ways to share the emotions that I have, trying to find new ways to tap into connectivity with people being so distant from everyone. And so I've been making bags just because I have an idea and I have a little bit of leather left still. And there's a couple of, you know, smaller collaborations that I'm working on right now that just get me excited, but also get me working to kind of keep my edge and keep me involved and keep conversations going. I just want to connect with the people that I know who are, you know, at least in the same like sphere of what I love to do. And it kind of spurs on being motivated and inspired and connecting with people. So I'm just creating in multiplicity of ways.
No, I think that's fabulous.
How are you staying inspired or plugged in this season?
You know what? I think there's this like seeing kind of like what you're, you know, what you just said, the seeing what other people are doing. And I spend a lot of time, you know, just sort of looking around on Instagram to see, okay, so what are magazines talking about now? What are, you know, how are like people that I know are designers that I know are just, you know, probably at this point just kind of just I don't want to say sitting on their hands, but just trying to sort of figure out.
In some ways they are, most teams, and so it's kind of hard.
And so just seeing, you know, what people are doing, like how they're coping with everything and how they're coping with, you know, even feeling like, you know, is my collection still going to be a thing, you know, next year? This time next year, am I going to be, you know, doing something completely different? And so, you know, what is it that I want to be doing? The process of trying to figure out what that looks like. I spend a lot of time looking to see what other people are doing, like what you're doing, and what other people, how they're coping, and how it's been interesting to see kind of like what magazines, like how magazines are dealing with right now. You know, just to see, to try and get a sense of like what people are going to want to see, want to read, and want to do a year from now.
Right. When we have,
because hopefully a year from now we're not still like stuck in our apartment.
Is there anyone specifically that you've been impressed by?
I think, like I mentioned, Business of Fashion earlier, I think that they are doing a really good job in connecting with their reader. They, you know, post opinions of you know, people who follow them about what they think the future of fashion is going to be. I mean, obviously that's not an average person on the street. If you're following their account, you at least you have more than just a passing interest in clothes. Like you're interested in the business, either as, you know, you're a big fan, or you're interested in the business, or, you know, you're PR, or, you know, whatever. So that's probably the first one that comes to mind. Well, first of all, it's a platform for people who are fans or in the industry, just to talk about what they think, and they get people who are, you know, like established people who will also comment on, you know, comment on the post. And so it's an interesting dialogue that I spend a lot of time looking at. But I think that's probably the first one that comes to mind, just because they've given people a platform to talk about it, but they also don't ignore the comments.
Right.
You know, they bring up to the forefront the ones that they think are really interesting to keep it going. You know, they're sort of like, oh, well, you know, this Rita Maria said that, you know, they have her quote as the actual post. People talk about it. So it keeps the conversation going. They
feel very grounded to me. I think that's just with how much value that they bring, because like you said, they have big name voices that they bring in and, you know, interview and give voice to in different ways, but they also have like the careers page, and they have education that they offer, and all spaces to not have it just feel like this elite group, but hey, this involves a much broader community than just the top tier names.
And they do a lot of posts on, you know, how to market your brand.
Yeah.
So they do a lot of, oh, here are some, books that you should read. If you're interested in, in fashion PR, or interested in, learning how to, maybe rethink how you market your brand after all this is over. So they do a lot of sort of professional guidance for people too. It's a really, it's a really great resource. And I think that's the one that comes to mind, is because they just are doing such a really good job.
So what else has been bouncing around in your head?
That our trip to Paris doesn't get canceled.
No! When was it supposed to be?
Not till September, but...
so then does that, because you guys were going specifically to work on one of the cookbooks, right? Because you were doing a series?
No, this was just like family trip.
Oh, I thought this was another trip with Marc.
No, Marc he was trying to figure that out. But then his husband, because I was like, Marc, we can't just go, because he made up all these different reasons. So we have to go, and the book is out now, so you have to go back and photograph the book and all these places. I'm like...
He just needs to go and stay there, because that's where he really wants to be.
I know, it's like, well, I would love to be there too. But I was like, Marc, that's not a reason. This was just going to be just like a family trip.
So what does work with Marc look like right now? Like, how are you guys doing food, photo shoots, all that? I'm so curious. Or are you just kind of pulling from the archives?
Well, he's shooting, he's been testing recipes for the next, I think, week and a half, 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so that, because he's shot by himself before.
Okay.
And so he'll, if I'm here doing whatever and he's shooting, he'll send me selects, and then, ask me, just to pick from there or whatever. And so, that will probably be what he does, for the next couple of weeks. But Shaida's been doing social media stuff and website content for him. So yes, that's what I've been doing now. And that all of that doesn't take me very long to do, because that's pretty much all that we can really work on right now. Still thinking about, we're already supposed to have begun work on the next cookbook, but like I said, it's giving me more time to kind of think about what I want to do.
I am super curious. So in my time being home and making my own stuff, I obviously can't I love being able to do photo shoots, directing shoots, and even being part of the editing. And I've been taking some photography courses just to have a little bit of the knowledge of the language around said device. And so while I've been home, I've been doing these self-timed photo shoots just to the need to create. Is there a way that you and I just had this idea 10 seconds ago, could come up with some sort of editorial idea via this platform and find a way to shoot it? Maybe we collaborate on a bag design. I make the bag, I record myself making the bag, and then we collaborate on what a photo shoot in my home could potentially look like, and somehow decide to shoot it and just see what happens.
Yes, it'd be so fun.
Let's try that. I think that would be a blast. Okay, we'll reconnect then. On doing it by myself is fine, and it just gives me the ability to create, but it's way more fun too to have more voices and different ideas flowing. You're gonna work on something?
I love collaborating. I never understood people who don't like collaboration.
Totally agree. It gets you out of your own head. Especially when you have so many ideas and you have a certain vision, you can use your vision as a filter for, yes, I'll do that. No, let's do it this way. But you have a totally different life experience and thought processes that I do, that if I were to pitch an idea, you just have different angles and a different voice. And I think it adds to it and builds to it to make a more beautiful finished product.
I agree. Yeah. Yay.
Sweet. I'm determined to get this editorial website of yours going, one step at a time. Just got to pull you out of that box a little bit.
No, you know me. I have to be 115% perfect before I have it go live.
I'm aware. All right, sweet. We'll get this going then.
Yay.
In the midst of this pandemic and whatnot, what to you has been life-giving?
Honestly, I think just being able to slow down. To be able to just kind of slow down physically and mentally, I think. Yeah.
Do you think that's allowed the space for you to consider these new ideas?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because there are things that I thought about for a while. Even when I, first left the magazine, it's well, I knew that I would never want to spend the whole rest of my life doing someone else's thing.
Sure.
It's well, I just turned 50, so I need to get
Did
going
you?
On that.
When was your birthday?
Yeah, girl, last Saturday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
I had no idea. What day was that?
The 2nd.
I am huge on birthdays. So first of all, I'm so sorry I missed it. It will be in my calendar now.
So yeah, it has, because those were things that I thought about before. But I'm thinking about it in a different way now. Because in a way, it seems like so many things were this, like we were talking about earlier, like the industry just kind of collapsing and all of that. So it allowed me spaces to kind of think about it in a different way. Yeah.
I love that. I've like attended, I haven't attended anything. I've attended online, different like fashion talks and things going on, like platforms like Business of Fashion, that they interview people and talking to a lot of designers and brand owners. And one of the things that I've noticed come up a lot is students asking questions of maybe it's like their last semester or they were going into their last year, and now they're really bummed because they're like, the industry I have just put all of my schoolwork and time and effort into, I don't even know where to begin looking for a job. Like, how do I do it? And one of the responses I've seen most consistently across the board is they've said, while there might not be a position open right now, take this time to work on your portfolio. Take this time to still doing what you do, because it then shows a brand, shows a business, here's what I'm able to do in the midst of crisis. And so I'm curious from your standpoint, for maybe somebody who's in editorial or looking to be an editorial, like what advice would you give them in the midst of this pandemic of going like, everyone's on a hiring freeze right now. So what would you advise them to be doing right now in the hope of one day working in editorial?
Well, I think that if you're someone that's younger now, you should probably already have, because you're not going to have a book of clips, because you haven't been working it, but you should already have, I don't want to call it a blog, but there should already be a website of writing that you've already done and are doing. This for along the lines of what you just said, just so you have something that's updated, and not necessarily something that so that you can create in a time of crisis, but that's something that just so you don't get caught behind the 8 ball, because there are not a lot of editorial positions anywhere. Definitely not here, because the editorial is so limited in Chicago, but anywhere. I would honestly have people start to think about creating their own project, because even if you do get an editorial job somewhere, the pay probably isn't going to be very good. And I guess there's maybe I just always assume that everybody wants to have their own name on something these days, and people I just think that people,
that's the way that your brain operates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't like people being the boss of me for very long.
So clearly everybody else thinks the same.
Exactly. When in fact it's probably not true. But yeah, I think if you at least have that mindset, because if you're at least thinking about, okay, so if I did, start my own publication or have my own some sort of brand, because people talk about, personal brands, and maybe that's a result of, of Instagram and how curated people have their lives, on Instagram. People kind of joke about having, like personal brands, but part of that is true. And so I think that if you think about what your own editorial brand would be if you started your own thing, and that could even help refine what you do professionally, even if it is for someone else.
I want to go back to something you said earlier when you were like, how did you word it? You said if you're looking for something in editorial, like you're obviously not looking in Chicago because there's nothing here. I'm curious from your perspective and experience, what would it take for editorial to be built up here or to even start here?
Money.
The answer to every question, truly.
Duh, Shelly. No, I say that because I know there's so many talented people here. Editorial, a lot of it is just basically saying how much work you can get out of as few people as possible. And so Chicago doesn't have, there's not like a lack of talent, but it's so expensive to run a print magazine, but it's also just expensive. People deserve, to be paid, like a real salary. That's a lot of work. Yeah. And so that's probably the main thing. I was kind of joking, but kind of not when I just said just money. Yeah. Because it's Chicago. There's a lot of stories here that can be told. Yeah. I almost wonder if there's going to need to be like a new way for these publications to find cash flow, right? Because if those bigger name businesses aren't seeing any value in the advertising going into print because nobody's buying print, Mm-hmm.
Like, cash flow needs to come from somewhere or they close down.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me wonder, is there a new way to come up with getting that cash flow? Like, what does that new structure need to look like on the other side of this?
Well, I have ideas for what I would do for my own brand, but I'm not giving them away. They're going to have to pay for them. No.
That's another reason to push you in this.
I have my own ideas, but they're mine, proprietary.
It's good. Innovation. I recently read a quote that said innovation is bringing new answers to old questions. Like, I love that. Sounds like you have some. All right, well, we're going to collaborate on our editorial soon. I needed this probably a long time ago to connect with you again. I don't know why it's been so long since we chatted. So thank you for taking the time to catch up. Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
You're wonderful. And I will reach out via email. We'll set a date for another FaceTime so that we can collaborate, please.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. I'm so excited.
Start getting some bag ideas. I'm limited on supplies and I'm limited on some machinery, but we can figure out something. Yes.
I was looking through my handbags yesterday. I was looking for something, looking for a scarf that I got in Paris. I think I might have lost, so I'm so sad. But I was looking at all my handbags. I was like, oh, I forgot I had this handbag. And so I was like pulling out all my...
Because you don't have to use them right now.
All my
like
handbags
shoes.
don't have anywhere to go. And I was like...
It's like shoes too. I'm like, oh yeah, remember when I wore those?
Exactly. When I was wearing not sweatpants.
Well, love and goodness to you and your family, and we will talk very soon.
You too. Okay, thank you so much. It was so fun.
Bye, dear.
Bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to tune into my conversation with Jennifer. I hope that it brought you some value or insight. Please leave a comment if anything resonated with you or maybe even what your greatest takeaway was.